Do you want to sleep? Then listen to me. Turn off the lights, close the windows, now close them and listen to you. Finally, I will make a request to you. Put down your phone and listen to my voice. Listen clearly. I will now tell you a story that will make you sleepy. Close your eyes and listen carefully to my words.
Before the iron swords, before the rising empires, before history even had clean edges, there was this world, a world shimmering on the brink, around 1200 BCE, 3,200 years in the past. The Bronze Age kingdoms still shine like copper in sunlight. Egypt, old and wise, its temples carved deep with memory. The Hittite Empire, vast, clever, and unhappy. Mycenaean Greece, full of warriors but running low on peace. Canaan and the Levant, crossroads of everything and everyone. Trade ships drift like sleepy beetles across the Mediterranean, carrying tin, copper, amber, ivory, secrets. And yet, there is a tremor in the world. The scribes whisper it. The merchants feel it on the waves. Even animals grow restless at night. Something is coming, and nobody knows what. But the clues begin quietly, almost gently, like ripples on the surface of a calm sea. A Hittite messenger arrives breathless at a mountain fortress. He carries a clay tablet wrapped in linen. It is stamped with the royal seal and with urgency. The officer breaks the seal. The tablet reads only 2 chilling lines. The western lands burn. Strange ships fill the sea. No names, no descriptions, no explanations. Just fear. For the first time in generations, the great kingdoms realize they may not be alone. Across the horizon, unseen behind the glow of sunset, ships move in silence. Ships that do not belong to any empire. Ships carved with unfamiliar symbols. Ships carrying people no one has ever recorded. People who would later be called the Sea Peoples. And this is where the mystery begins. The night deepens around the ancient palace of Ugarit. Wind moves softly through the palm fronds, carrying the smell of the sea and something else. A heaviness, a warning. In a dimly lit chamber, a royal scribe sits cross-legged on the floor, ink trembling in his brush. His hands shake as he leans over a clay tablet, not because he is tired, but because the king has ordered this message to be written in absolute secrecy. A message not meant for history's eyes. A message he believes will never be read. The scribe glances toward the doorway. Guards stand outside, unmoving, their torches flickering amber against the stone. He takes a breath, steadies himself, and continues carving. My brother, ships have been sighted on the horizon. Not traders, not allies. They bear no flags, only black sails. The stylus pauses. He dips it into ink again, listening for footsteps. There are none. Only the rhythmic pounding of waves against the city walls, like a giant knocking, slowly, deliberately, at the gates. He writes again. They destroy all before them. They show mercy to no one. By the time this letter reaches you, I may already be gone. The scribe swallows hard. Who are these people? No one knows their language. Their armor does not match any kingdom known to the world. They fight like they came from the sea itself, silent, coordinated, unstoppable. He whispers to himself, "Sea peoples, the gods help us." A sudden gust of wind slips through the window and snuffs out one of the oil lamps. The room falls half into shadow. The scribe's heart races. He seals the clay tablet, passes it to a courier, and watches the rider disappear into the darkness, the hooves echoing down the empty street like a final heartbeat. Later, that same night, as the scribe prepares another tablet, he hears something in the distance. A horn. Deep, low, unmistakable. A warning horn from the harbor. He rushes outside. People are emerging from their homes, confused, afraid. Children cling to their mothers. Dogs bark wildly. Fishermen stare toward the black horizon. And then, a glow. Not sunlight, not moonlight. A flickering orange glow rising from beyond the harbor, swelling, brighter and brighter. Fire! The scribe's breath catches. They're here. He tries to speak again, but the words never leave his mouth, because at that moment the ground trembles under his feet, as if something enormous has just touched the shores of the city. Something no one in the Bronze Age was prepared to face. The year drifts softly to 1200 BCE, like sand slipping through ancient fingers. Night settles over the eastern Mediterranean, and the world feels strangely hollow, as if someone has pulled the sound out of the air. Along the coastline, fires still smolder where great cities once stood. You walk through the ruins of Ugarit, the moonlight spreading across toppled walls like a pale shroud. The wind carries a faint scent of burnt cedar, and every step crunches on pottery that no one will ever use again. A letter, discovered centuries later, rests in your thoughts. Enemies are at the gates. The ships are too many. The writer never sent it, or perhaps there was simply no one left to receive it. Southward, the ancient kingdom of the Hittites, mighty for centuries, has gone silent. The clay tablets that once recorded treaties, markets, and kings now lie buried beneath layers of ash. Even Egypt, the eternal kingdom, whispers of fear. The last great pharaoh of the age, Ramesses III, writes in trembling hieroglyphs about invaders arriving not just by sea, but by land, with families, cattle, and wagons. A migration or an escape? No one knows. But everywhere you travel in this fading world, you notice the same things. Harbors abandoned mid-construction, fields left unharvested under the hot sun, roads empty except for dust and drifting reeds, and a strange, heavy quiet that settles on the earth like a blanket. It feels as if the world is holding its breath, waiting for someone, anyone, to explain why an entire era is dissolving. Civilization isn't supposed to vanish like mist, and yet here you stand, in a silence so deep you can hear the sea breathing. The world before the sea peoples is gone. What rises in its place, you will soon discover.
Night falls across the Bronze Age world, and quiet settles over the ruined palace at Ugarit. The air is thick with heat, and torches flicker along half-collapsed walls. Somewhere beyond the horizon, thunder rolls like a warning. But tonight, our story shifts. Far from Ugarit, across deserts and fields of copper-green mountains, other kingdoms are hearing the same unsettling whispers. Not from messengers, not from traders, but from the sea itself. The Pharaoh's unease. In Egypt, Pharaoh Merneptah stands on a balcony overlooking the mighty Nile. The river reflects the moon like liquid silver. Normally, this sight calms him. Tonight, it does not. Priests approach him, bows low. "Great Pharaoh," one of them says softly, "fishermen speak of strangers on the water, ships unlike any they have ever seen." Merneptah closes his eyes. He has read reports, small villages along the coast abandoned, grain stores mysteriously raided, and strange carvings found on washed-up pieces of wood. Symbols no one recognizes. Symbols of a culture no one claims. Symbols of a people blown in by catastrophe. "Prepare the scribes," the Pharaoh murmurs. The world changes. In the halls of Hatti. Far to the north, in the grand capital of the Hittites, the king paces through his audience chamber. Clay tablets lie scattered across a table, each one bearing troubling messages. A missing garrison, an attacked border town, and most troubling of all, a report from the coast of ships with curved prows and sails striped like storm clouds. The king looks out over his dark kingdom. "We face an enemy," he mutters, "that does not send warnings, only waves." Lightning flashes in the distance, illuminating the mountains. For the first time in decades, the king feels something unfamiliar. Not fear, but the knowledge that fear is coming. The secret spread. Across Cyprus, Mycenaean Greece, Canaan, Hatti, and Egypt, rumors swirl like smoke. Strangers, invaders, refugees, warriors, lost nations. Nobody agrees on who the Sea Peoples are, but every kingdom feels the same rising dread. It is as if the world, the entire Bronze Age world, is holding its breath, waiting for a storm to break open. And somewhere on the open sea, carried by wind and tide, those nameless ships continue to drift forward. Not in chaos, not in panic, but with purpose. The year drifts softly to 1200 BCE, like sand slipping through ancient fingers. Night settles over the eastern Mediterranean, and the world feels strangely hollow, as if someone has pulled the sound out of the air. Along the coastline, fires still smolder where great cities once stood. You walk through the ruins of Ugarit, the moonlight spreading across toppled walls like a pale shroud. The wind carries a faint scent of burnt cedar,
and every step crunches on pottery that no one will ever use again. A letter, discovered centuries later, rests in your thoughts. Enemies are at the gates. The ships are too many. The writer never sent it, or perhaps there was simply no one left to receive it. Southward, the ancient kingdom of the Hittites, mighty for centuries, has gone silent. The clay tablets that once recorded treaties, markets, and kings now lie buried beneath layers of ash. Even Egypt, the eternal kingdom, whispers of fear. The last great pharaoh of the age, Ramesses III, writes in trembling hieroglyphs about invaders arriving not just by sea, but by land, with families, cattle, and wagons. A migration or an escape? No one knows. But everywhere you travel in this fading world, you notice the same things. Harbors abandoned mid-construction, fields left unharvested under the hot sun, roads empty except for dust and drifting reeds, and a strange, heavy quiet that settles on the earth like a blanket. It feels as if the world is holding its breath, waiting for someone, anyone, to explain why an entire era is dissolving. Civilization isn't supposed to vanish like mist, and yet here you stand, in a silence so deep you can hear the sea breathing. The world before the sea peoples is gone. What rises in its place, you will soon discover. Night settles over the ancient Mediterranean like a velvet curtain. Stars shimmer above the coast of Ugarit, one of the brightest jewels of the late Bronze Age world. But tonight, its glow feels dimmed, as if the city itself senses a distant tremor in time. You walk through quiet streets lined with whitewashed houses and incense lamps. Everything looks peaceful. Scribes finishing their clay tablets, merchants storing jars of wine and oil, children asleep in courtyards, priests closing the temple gates. But beneath the calm runs a strange, invisible current, a tension in the air, like the breath held before lightning strikes. Inside the royal palace, King Hammurabi paces slowly. He is young, thoughtful, and respected, but tonight he is troubled. Caravans from inland have not arrived. Ships from Cyprus are late, and the winds, usually soft at this season, roar strangely against the coast. You watch as a messenger hands him a clay tablet, freshly pressed. The king reads it. His hands tremble. It is a letter from a neighboring city, warning him. The enemy is coming by sea. We are unable to resist them. That word again, the one whispered from island to island. The enemy. No name, no homeland, no clear identity. Just a shadow that sweeps across the map, leaving ash in its wake. Hammurabi closes his eyes. The sea peoples. If they truly existed, if they were more than rumor, then Ugarit stood directly in their path. He orders the fleet to be prepared, the watchtowers to be manned, the gates to be sealed. But then, a warm breeze rolls in from the sea. The moon ripples on the water, and for a moment, everything feels peaceful again. You step outside the palace and hear the waves sighing against the shore. Fishermen are pulling in their nets.
unaware of the storm drawing closer each night. The Bronze Age world is holding its breath, and far across the water, ships with curved prows and painted eyes glide silently through the dark, heading toward a kingdom that still believes it has time. Tomorrow will prove it wrong.
Night deepens over the great sea, a velvet darkness stretching from horizon to horizon. The moon hides behind thin clouds, glowing faintly like a watchful eye. The wind has quieted, even the waves have grown slow, as if the world itself is holding its breath. You sit beside the historian again, your quiet guide through this strange, ancient world, and he points toward the open water. "There," he whispers. At first, you see nothing, only dark water and drifting starlight. Then, movement. A shape glides across the surface, then another, then many. Dozens. No lanterns, no drums, no voices calling between ships, just shadows of long vessels slipping through the night like a tide of ghosts. The historian lowers his voice even more. "Imagine an entire fleet," he murmurs, "moving without a single torch, no kingdom's banner, no familiar sails, no warning. The only sound is the gentle flap of wind against woven sails, so soft it almost blends into the sea breeze. These," he says, "are the ships no scribe dared name, the ones that arrived first." You watch the silent armada approach the coastline, the hulls low and narrow, made for speed. The prows are carved with things you don't recognize: spirals, animal heads, symbols that seem almost dreamlike. On the nearest ship, you glimpse figures: bare-armed warriors with tattooed shoulders, faces hidden in shadow, oars moving in perfect silence, and at the center, someone standing completely still, like a statue carved from darkness. As the ships drift closer, the historian continues softly. Some believe the Sea Peoples came as raiders. Some say they were refugees, and some whisper they were driven out by a disaster greater than anything we can imagine. He leans closer. But whatever the truth was, this was the night everything changed. The ships angled toward shore, not rushing, not attacking, not hesitating, just arriving, as if they already belonged here. A hollow, distant thunk echoes through the darkness, an anchor hitting sand, then another and another. The historian's voice becomes almost a breath. He says, "This moment was the beginning of the end for the Bronze Age world." You feel the air tremble around you. The silent fleet waits, utterly still. The waves roll in softly like a lullaby. The world 3,200 years ago is on the edge of something immense, something no one left alive would ever fully understand. Night settles over the ancient Mediterranean like a velvet shroud. The stars hang low and soft, as if leaning close to witness what happens next. You drift deeper into the story. The silence after the storm. When the Sea People struck a land, they vanished just as quickly. And so when dawn rose over the shattered coastline of Ugarit, the surviving scribes walked the ruined streets in disbelief. Homes stood open to the sea breezes, pots lay cracked, torches smoldered, and yet there were no bodies, no invaders, no defenders, only silence. It was as if an entire population had stepped out for a moment and never returned. The lone surviving letter from the king of Ugarit, still half dry on a clay tablet, told the world what had happened. The enemy ships are among us. I call for aid, but the horizon darkens. Scholars cling to that line like a whispered memory from a dying civilization. A domino begins to fall. Not long after Ugarit's disappearance, word spread. Hattusa, capital of the mighty Hittite Empire, had also fallen. People arrived expecting markets, music, and the great stone lions that once guarded the gates. What they found was ash. Not looted, not occupied, just emptiness, as if the wind itself had swept a city off the map. Even the forests around it were burned, leaving blackened trunks reaching for the sky. How could an empire vanish so completely? Some say famine weakened the people. Others whisper of internal rebellions. But late-night historians always return to one chilling possibility. Someone or something made them disappear. A web of broken worlds. Across the sea, on Cyprus, pottery changed overnight. In Greece, the great palaces fell. Along the coast of Canaan, new fortresses appeared as if built in desperation. Like a string of lanterns going out one by one, the world dimmed. For centuries later, travelers would stand on lonely hillsides and swear they felt echoes beneath their feet, the ghosts of lost nations. It wasn't just cities that vanished. It was knowledge, trade, writing, kings, worlds. And through this darkness, one rumor grew stronger. The Sea Peoples were not merely raiders. They were a migrating storm, a force of nature, a tide that no one knew how to stop. And yet, one civilization remained: Egypt, battered, starving, desperate, but still standing and waiting, because the pharaoh had seen the smoke rising on every horizon. He knew the tide was coming, and he prepared for the final clash.
Night deepens over the great sea, a velvet darkness stretching from horizon to horizon. The moon hides behind thin clouds, glowing faintly like a watchful eye. The wind has quieted. Even the waves have grown slow, as if the world itself is holding its breath. You sit beside the historian again, your quiet guide through this strange, ancient world, and he points toward the open water. There, he whispers. At first, you see nothing, only dark water and drifting starlight. Then, movement. A shape glides across the surface, then another, then many, dozens. No lanterns, no drums, no voices calling between ships, just shadows of long vessels slipping through the night like a tide of ghosts. The historian lowers his voice even more. Imagine an entire fleet, he murmurs, moving without a single torch, no kingdom's banner, no familiar sails, no warning. The only sound is the gentle flap of wind against woven sails, so soft it almost blends into the sea breeze. These, he says, are the ships no scribe dared name, the ones that arrived first. You watch the silent armada approach the coastline, the hulls low and narrow, made for speed. The prows are carved with things you don't recognize: spirals, animal heads, symbols that seem almost dreamlike. On the nearest ship, you glimpse figures: bare-armed warriors with tattooed shoulders, faces hidden in shadow, oars moving in perfect silence, and at the center, someone standing completely still, like a statue carved from darkness. As the ships drift closer, the historian continues softly. Some believe the Sea Peoples came as raiders. Some say they were refugees, and some whisper they were driven out by a disaster greater than anything we can imagine. He leans closer. But whatever the truth was, this was the night everything changed. The ships angle toward shore, not rushing, not attacking, not hesitating, just arriving, as if they already belonged here. A hollow, distant thunk echoes through the darkness, an anchor hitting sand, then another and another. The historian's voice becomes almost a breath. He says, "This moment was the beginning of the end for the Bronze Age world." You feel the air tremble around you. The silent fleet waits, utterly still. The waves roll in softly like a lullaby. The world 3,200 years ago is on the edge of something immense, something no one left alive would ever fully understand.
Sleep settles over the ancient world like a heavy curtain as you drift deeper into the memory realm of 3,200 years ago. But tonight, something changes. You stand on a quiet hillside overlooking a vast coastline. Moonlight glimmers across the harbor below, once alive with merchants, musicians, and ships carved with painted eyes. Now it is still, too still. A faint wind carries the scent of smoke and something else you can't name. You're not in any single city. You are in a woven memory, a dream reconstruction pulled from broken tablets, charred pottery, and the whispers of frightened scribes. Below you lies a world about to vanish. The first shockwave. A tremor runs through the earth. Not an earthquake. A sound, distant but enormous, like dozens of ships beating the waves in perfect rhythm. A glow rises on the horizon. Not the sun. Flames. One city after another falls into silence. Ugarit, its final letters carved into clay as enemies reached the gates. Atusa, once mighty capital of the Hittites, now abandoned and broken. Ashkelon, where people fled toward the sea. Cyprus, where smoke spiraled into the heavens like a dark omen. You watch the coastline as fires blossom one by one, each a fading heartbeat of a collapsing age. The Bronze Age, proud and glittering, is coming undone. The whisper travelers. Behind you, something shifts. Not soldiers, not invaders, shadows made of whispers, drifting like fragments of forgotten history. They take shapes. A scribe clutching unfinished letters, a sailor rowing against impossible waves, a merchant carrying a bag of worthless bronze, a queen who no longer has a city to rule. These figures pass through you, memories, not ghosts, pieces of a world writing its final chapter. The vanishing trade lanes. A salty breeze brushes your face.
The sea itself feels wounded. Where once copper flowed from Cyprus, tin traveled from distant mountains, ships traded olive oil, wine, grain, gold. Now everything has stopped. Every harbor you see goes dark. Every lighthouse sputters out. The great web connecting kingdoms collapses like a broken fishing net. You hear a faint voice behind you. Without trade, the kingdoms fall, and without kings, the sea claims all. You turn, but no one is there. Only moonlight on empty sand. The silent armada. Then you see them. A fleet of ships approaching. No banners, no familiar designs, only strange curved hulls and sails marked with symbols you do not recognize. The Sea Peoples. Not an army, a migration. A tide of those who lost everything, homes, nations, land swallowed by famine or disaster. They are desperate, determined, unstoppable. Their paddles slap the waves in grim unison. And as they land, the world you're watching finally exhales in defeat. The lights of the Bronze Age dim. A new era prepares to rise from the ashes. You blink, and the silence becomes sleep. As the fires fade and the sea darkens, you drift backward, floating away from the ruined coast. History becomes mist, the whispers of lost kingdoms settling into a deep, ancient quiet. You inhale, exhale. The old world is gone. The next begins in the next chapter.
Night settles gently over the ancient world, and with it, a strange quiet. A quiet that historians still struggle to understand. Across the eastern Mediterranean, one city after another begins to dim, like distant lamps going out on a windy evening. But this isn't the silence of peace, it is the silence of disappearance. You drift slowly through this dreamlike landscape, hovering above the world as it was 3,200 years ago. Smoke lingers on the horizon in thin gray threads, rising from cities that once glowed with life. But each plume is fading now, faint as breath on glass. Ugarit, once a thriving port full of merchants and music, lies half buried in ash. Clay tablets sit scattered on the ground, marked with hurried pleas for aid that never arrived. Hattusa, capital of the mighty Hittites, stands hollowed out, a kingdom emptied like a fallen tree, eaten from within by forces we still cannot fully trace. Mycenae, land of warriors and legends, flickers like a dying ember. The great stone lions at its gate stare into the distance, guarding a world slipping silently into dusk. No single empire holds steady. No king is immune. No army is large enough to repel what feels like a rolling wave of collapse. And yet, no one leaves clear records explaining why. You float across coastlines that once bustled with trade ships. Now, harbors sit quiet, nets drifting in still water as if waiting for fishermen who will never return. It is as though the entire world is holding its breath, waiting, listening for what comes next. Some blame the mysterious invaders we now call the Sea Peoples. Others whisper of famine, earthquakes, drought, rebellion, maybe all at once. But standing here, suspended between past and twilight, you sense something else. A great unraveling. Like a tapestry pulled at one corner, threads loosening quietly, slowly, until the entire picture gently collapses into a pile of colorless strands. The cities fall, the kingdoms fade, and the Bronze Age, the world's first international age, slips softly into darkness. But in that darkness, something begins to stir. A new world is forming, one that will rise from the ashes of the old. And that, traveler, is where the mystery deepens.
The hidden chamber beneath the ash. Night settles over the ruined city like a heavy cloak, muffling sound and softening every broken edge of stone. The air still smells faintly of soot and something older, something buried. Elias and Mira stand before what used to be a grand palace courtyard. Now it's a maze of cracked pillars and collapsed walls, lit only by the warm glow of their oil lamps. But beneath the destruction, there is something untouched. A breeze slips up through the rubble, carrying with it a hint of cool earth. Mira kneels, brushing away ash. Her fingers reveal cut stone, perfectly smooth, forming a narrow seam. A door, she whispers. A hidden one. Elias joins her, heart beating in that slow, steady rhythm of discovery. No wonder no one ever found the archives. They weren't stored above ground. He presses against the stone. It groans softly, ancient hinges protesting after centuries of silence. And then the slab shifts, opening into a sloping tunnel swallowed in darkness. Mira lifts her lamp. The flame dances, reflecting off metal studs carved into the wall, bronze nails shaped like tiny suns. The people here expected danger, she says, tracing one. They sealed knowledge below, not above. They were preparing for something. Elias swallows. Or running from something. They descend slowly, the air growing cooler with each step. The tunnel widens, revealing a chamber untouched by fire or raids. Inside are shelves carved directly into the stone. And on those shelves lie scrolls sealed in clay tubes, perfectly preserved. Mira gasps quietly. Their history, their warnings, their last messages. Elias gently lifts one tube. On its surface, carved in a shaking hand. Before the great fleet arrived. A chill ripples down his spine. Before he can read more, a distant rumble echoes up the tunnel. Not thunder, not wind, but footsteps. Heavy ones. Mira's lamp flickers. Elias steps protectively in front of her. No one else should know this place exists, yet the footsteps grow louder, closer, as if someone or something has been waiting for centuries for someone to open this chamber again. Elias whispers, "We're not alone down here." The lamp flame shivers violently. Then the sound stops. Total silence. They brace themselves. And the chamber doors slowly begin to close.
Night settles over the ancient world, a soft velvet curtain drawn across lands still trembling from the chaos of a vanished era. And yet, beneath that blanket of darkness, something glows. Not fire, not war, but memory. In Egypt, the scribes finish writing their final accounts of the invasions. Their ink dries slowly, like the last breath of a civilization that has endured every storm. In Ugarit, now only a silent ruin, the stars shine on broken stones that once held messages begging for help that never came. Across the Mediterranean, new peoples slowly rebuild what was lost. Farmers return to shattered fields, traders reopen ancient sea routes, potters shape simple vessels where ornate ones once stood. New languages begin to form from the ashes of old. The world is quieter now, simpler, wounded, yet still breathing. And far out at sea, where gentle waves rock the remnants of forgotten fleets, a small craft drifts towards sunrise. Its sailors do not know they are the Sea Peoples. They only know they are searching for land, for safety, for a new beginning. Perhaps they carry memories of storms and battles. Perhaps they carry stories passed on in whispers, stories of why they left their homelands or who pushed them to flee. But those stories never reached the scribes. They never etched themselves into clay tablets. They never carved themselves into temple walls. Instead, they became waves, rolling endlessly across history, erased, rewritten, and lost again. And so, the Bronze Age ends not with a single moment, but with a dimming, a slow fading of knowledge, a gentle collapse of the world's first great network of cultures. Yet the mystery remains, suspended between silence and speculation. Who were the Sea Peoples? Refugees? Invaders? Survivors? Victims of drought, war, earthquake? All of them? Tonight, we cannot solve the riddle, but we can drift among its pieces, floating softly through the ruins of 3,200 years ago, because some mysteries are not meant to be solved. Some are meant to be felt, like the hush after a storm, like the shadow of an age that once shone bright, like the heartbeat of the ancient world still echoing beneath the sands. As the sun rises over a changed Mediterranean, a new age begins. And the Sea Peoples, their ships now long gone, leave behind only questions, beautiful, haunting, eternal questions. And with that, the last ember of the Bronze Age flickers and gently fades into sleep.
Night settles across the ancient world like a heavy velvet curtain. Stars shimmer above the dark sea, and the waves move with the quiet rhythm of breathing. Somewhere between Cyprus and the crumbling coasts of Canaan, a small, half-broken raft drifts aimlessly. On it lies a single man. He is old, older than the storms he has weathered, older than the battles that stole his home. Salt clings to his beard, and his eyes, though tired, still hold the deep memory of a life lived across shattered kingdoms. He is the last survivor of his people, the Sea Peoples. But tonight he is simply a man drifting beneath the stars, a faint glow on the horizon. As the raft rises and falls, he lifts his head and sees something in the distance. Not fire, not ships, not the red glow of war, but light, soft, warm, impossible. It looks like a city floating on the ocean, a dream from the world before collapse. His whisper is barely a breath.
Is that home? But he cannot tell. The light flickers, fades, returns again, like a memory trying to surface. Fragments of a forgotten world. The old man begins to speak, the way someone talks to keep themselves awake. We were not demons. We were not destroyers. We were wanderers. We were pushed across the world by a hunger no one understood. He remembers things scholars only guess at. Islands drying under a burning sun, roots blocked by raiders and storms, crops withering until land cracked open, families forced to choose between leaving or dying. He remembers leaders who begged distant kings for food. He remembers being turned away over and over until desperation became destiny. We had no choice, he murmurs into the night. The secret he has carried. For years, empires blamed the sea peoples for their downfall, but he knows the truth. The collapse had begun long before the first ship launched. It started with the earth itself, with droughts, earthquakes, migrations, greed, failing kings, and a world stretched too thin. We were the last wave, not the cause. The wind carries his words away, scattering them like seeds across the water. No scribe hears him. No kingdom will record it. But still, the truth leaves his lips. A peaceful ending. The glowing city in the distance is gone now, swallowed by mist. Maybe it was a memory, maybe a dream, maybe a place that never truly existed. The raft drifts onward. The man lies back, closes his eyes, and for the first time in many years, he feels calm. The sea hums a low, gentle song. The stars lean close like old friends. And as sleep finally washes over him, he whispers a final thought. Let the world remember us kindly. The waves answer with a soft embrace, and the last survivor drifts into the quiet forever.
The fire crackles softly as the old historian pauses, letting the glow of the embers warm the dim tent. Outside, the night of 3,200 years ago is still and windless, as though the world itself is holding its breath. You sit beside him, wrapped in a wool blanket, listening to the last echoes of the past. Now, he murmurs, we come to the strangest part of the Sea People's saga, the part that no king carved into stone. He unrolls a final brittle scroll. It is said, he whispers, that after the battles faded, after the fleets burned and the raiders vanished, something happened across the entire Eastern Mediterranean. He looks at you, eyes reflecting the firelight. Silence. A silence so deep, even the waves felt it. Across the world of the Bronze Age, great cities lay broken. The once vast palace of Hattusa, cold and empty. The harbors of Cyprus, quiet as abandoned shells. The Mycenaean kingdoms, nothing but wind through shattered doorways. No armies marched, no envoys traveled, no merchants sang out their prices. Just quiet. The historian breathes slowly, letting his voice soften into a near whisper. But here is the secret most never hear. Not all endings are truly endings. In the stillness that followed the collapse, small things began to move. A mother teaching her child to plant barley where a palace once stood. A potter shaping new clay in a town nobody had destroyed,
because nobody knew it existed. A fisherman repairing his net beside a ruined harbor, humming a tune older than any kingdom. Life, tiny, fragile, but relentless, began again. Civilizations fall, he says gently. People rise. He rolls the scroll back up and tucks it away. As for the sea peoples themselves, their names, their homelands, their kings, lost. He gives a tired smile. But their children blended into new tribes, new cultures, new languages. Perhaps, he shrugs lightly, into us. The fire burns lower. The wind finally returns, soft, cool, brushing the tent canvas like a lullaby. We may never uncover the full truth, he murmurs, but that is the magic of ancient history. Every mystery leaves room for dreams. He leans back, letting his eyes drift closed. Outside, the world of the past fades into a calm, endless night. And you, listening to the final quiet after the storm of forgotten centuries, feel sleep slowly gathering around you. Soft as ash, warm as firelight, deep as the ancient sea.